Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the City of West Miami and welcome to the town meeting in reference to Hurricane Preparation Workshop. Today here we have with us Armando Fernandez
Yes.
and also we have Nick Sardinas. Welcome to the City of West Miami. First of all, let me, Madam Clerk, anything that we need to follow? We don't per se have an agenda, so I guess we don't have to call.
Just for the record,
Uh-huh.
present are Mayor Eduardo Mujina, Vice Mayor Rhonda Rodriguez, and Commissioner Candida Blanca. In this moment, City Clerk Nery Gonzalez, Acting City Manager, will be here shortly. And Mayor, you can proceed with the order of business as you wish, because town hall meetings are kind of more casual.
Okay, so once again, I want to welcome you, and I want to also revisit that we are very, very happy for you to be here today. This is something that we have wanted to bring on
Yes.
to actually to educate our residents. I was hoping that more will be here tonight, and the fact that they're not here, that means they're very happy. So,
Yes.
and they're very complacent. So, we're gonna be, this is gonna be air, it's gonna be recorded, and for future residents to partake. So with that, I'll leave it in your hand. I just want to thank you for being here, and thank you for the many things that you have done in the past for the city of West Miami, and I'm not going to give out your cell number today.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for having us here. And, you know, we always are very interested in these types of opportunities to get the message out of, you know, hurricane preparedness, what FPL does, and what, you know, our customers, which are the residents of West Miami, should do as well. So with that, let me give you a brief presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, I'll take questions if there's any. With me, I have, you know, Nick Sardina. He is with our vegetation management. So he is our resident expert on all things that are trees, tree-related issues, you know, trimming cycles, and things of that nature. So, you know, we'll take questions at the end. Okay, so the presentation is our hurricane response overview. And, you know, to start, I wanted to, you know, give you a couple of interesting facts about FPL's territory. We service over 35 counties in the state of Florida. That represents 4.9 accounts. Now, remember, for every account, which is for us is a meter, you could estimate about 1.5 to 2 people per household. So in essence, we service over about 10 million customers in the state of Florida. But we are only one of 58 utilities. A lot of people don't know that there is 58 other utilities in the state of Florida. Of course, we are the largest. Another interesting fact that I wanted to bring light to was that out of those roughly 4.9 million customers, 9 out of 10 live within 20 miles of the shore. So the coast. So that I wanted to bring that to light to illustrate that 9 out of 10 of our customers, you know, are in the front line of, you know, taking the brunt of a storm as it makes landfall. So that is our challenge at FPL, to make sure that we are able to respond to those residents and restore their power as quickly and as safely as possible. Next slide. So, you know, what are we doing on the FPL side? Well, the first thing that we've been doing is we have been strengthening our infrastructure to the extreme wind loading standard. That basically means that all our poles now meet or exceed the extreme wind load of, I believe at this point, it's about 145 mile per hour winds.
Cat 5.
I'm sorry? Cat 5, yes. You know, also, what we're doing is training. FPL is constantly in a state of training. You know, we have a phrase inside the company that, you know, whenever we're not in a storm, we're training for one. So our training for storm is a year-round process that usually starts for us internally, you know, in early part of the year. You know, we take lessons learned from whatever storms we had before us, and we apply the new learnings, we apply new tools, and we're constantly evolving our training to you know, be the best that we could be. We're also always working to ensure that we can restore power as quickly as possible. And what does that mean? For us, it means always constantly working on securing staging sites for these large, which are basically small cities for when there is a storm. You know, we bring countless contractors from around the country to respond and restore the system as quickly as possible. So we have these staging sites throughout our service territory. And then obviously the last leg in our plan is communication. You know, making sure that we're always communicating with our stakeholders, with our customers, through, you know, traditional media outlets about what we're doing and encouraging them to have a plan as well. Next slide. So, you know, I had mentioned that we are making our grid more resilient. You know, to that end, just to give you some high-level numbers, over the last couple of years, we've invested over $3 billion in our infrastructure. And what does that mean? Most of that has been in our main power lines. And just to give you an understanding of how our network works, you know, we have our transmission lines. Our transmission lines are the larger poles. You could consider those as the superhighway of our system. You know, that's the bulk moving power from substation to substation, from generation to substation. Then we have what we call our main power lines. And those main power lines are what we call feeders. Those are the lines that go down, you know, major, you know, avenues, right? And then we have what we call lateral lines, which are, those are the community lines that, you know, snake between, you know, the rear of the houses. So, you know, you have your transmission lines, your main power lines, and your lateral lines. So, you know, in this hardening process, we have hardened over 860 of those main power lines. And what does that mean? That, you know, these lines that service 911 centers, critical infrastructure such as hospitals, you know, groceries, gas stations, those lines are hardened and are able to withstand better extreme wind events. We're also instituted a very robust pole inspection program, and we've inspected 1.2 million of our poles. And if we find a pole that's deteriorated, you know, we put it on the list for replacement. Just, you know, earlier today, you know, one of your constituents was telling me about a pole, so she's going to be sending me that address, and we're going to report it. We're going to have it inspected, and if it's deteriorated, you know, we're going to replace it. And then, lastly, we've also, cleared 15 yearly. We clear 15,000 miles of vegetation. You know, that's for our service territory. But to put that into perspective, that is enough miles to go from here to China and back. And we do that type of clearing on a yearly basis. And then lastly, we have, you know, we are in the eve of sea level rise. So, you know, we have gone forward and started installing flood monitors at all at 223 of our substations, the ones that are most at risk of flooding. And what does that do? That gives us real-time diagnostics as, you know, Lord forbid, one of storm surge is affecting one of our substations, that we could identify that and reroute the power from other substations. So this is all the hardening that we've put into the system, in addition to other smart technology, which I will discuss now. We've also installed about 5 million smart meters. So pretty much everybody now in our service, all our customers have smart meters. What does that mean? That we get a real-time signal from everyone's meter, letting us know if you have power, if you don't, what's going on with your power. So even before you call us that your power's out, we know it's out, and we're already trying to address the issue, which is shaving time off of our restoration. In addition, we've also installed about 90,000 intelligent devices on our grid, making our grid smart. And what are these? These are interrupters. These are automatic switching equipment. This is equipment that identifies an issue and switches the power around the problem. So this anticipates, you know, we've gotten to a point where we have equipment that's being predictive in nature. You know, our president tells a funny story about this, that, you know, we've gone to houses where residents have been, you know, have power, and our employees, our crews go and say, listen, we need to fix the line behind your house because you haven't lost power, but you're about to lose power in 2 or 3 days. So, you know, we've gotten to a point where we could, you know, predict certain outages, and we're addressing those. And then, you know, obviously all this smart equipment gives us a lot of information. So we've established diagnostic centers throughout our territory that are constantly taking all this information and seeing where we have problems and are addressing those problems before they become outages. Next slide. So again, what are we doing with our employees? Well, again, we have nearly 9,000 employees that have storm assignments. You know, I myself have a storm assignment. I work out of the Miami EOC. So funny enough, you know, your storm assignment might have nothing to do with your general role in the company. You know, so we're always working at, you know, having those employees constantly drilled for training on hurricane preparedness. And we actually do a mock storm in early May. We take 5 days, and, you know, we stage up. We bring in the media so that they could see how we would react in a storm. And for those 5 days, we're tracking a theoretical storm, and we'll you know, have streets that are flooded, you know, a crane that went down. You know, we'll throw issues at our employees to see how they would troubleshoot and identify gaps in our training. So we are constantly evolving our processes to learn and become more efficient. So, you know, the other way that we're always trying to improve is, you know, we partner with our local leaders. You know, FPL, one of the biggest questions that we get at FPL is, how do you set the priority for what gets restored and when? You know, excuse me. The list of priority is actually set by the Department of Emergency Management at the county. The only thing that we mandate is on that list is major hospitals and the 911 centers. But everything else is then taken into consideration and put on the list by the department, the Office of Emergency Management of the county in consultation with municipalities. Next slide. So what do we do in the pre-season, which is for us, it's the time between March and the start of hurricane season? Well, obviously, we go through we do media interviews. We use social media, and if I could impart on you one thing before I go, is the importance of following FPL on Twitter and Facebook. There's a lot of information that we're putting out on our Twitter feed and our Facebook feed, and that's an invaluable tool that you could use during the storm. And we also communicate through bill inserts and commercials. I'm sure I'm not the only one that sees the constant barrage of FPL ads as we work up to storm season about us being ready and asking people to make sure that they have a plan. Just a little bit more on that. We have a website which I recommend again that everybody visits. They bookmark it into their browser because there's a wealth of information. I actually printed out some of the information for the residents of West Miami that came to the meeting, but there is tons of more information online that they could take. And then, obviously, if you have one of these, there's apps that we have created so that keeps you abreast of what we're doing, outage numbers, outage windows. So again, if you have a smartphone, I encourage you to download the apps. So what is our plan and how does it start? Well, a lot of people don't know, but FPL has an in-house meteorologist. And that meteorologist is tracking everything that is coming off the tip of Africa during storm season to see if there's the potential for formation. In fact, just this morning, I woke up to an email from him about a tropical storm, potentially Ernesto, that was, it doesn't seem like it's going to pose a threat to us, but we're constantly monitoring what's going on in the Atlantic and in the Gulf of Mexico. So once something is formed and it hits that 96-hour window, which is 4 days before the storm, is when FPL actually activates its storm rules. At that point, everybody that has a storm duty starts their planning. Like me, I work at the Miami EOC, so I'll start reaching out to the city of Miami, seeing when we need to report, what we need to bring. We also start analyzing what kind of damage we could expect from the storm. With the help of our meteorologists, we start seeing, the wind, how strong it could potentially get. And that damage assessment is critical because off of that damage assessment, we start calling in our crews and securing material. FPL always has a healthy backup of poles and transformers, but we always have a contact with our vendors to start shipping in so that we could have enough to address any potential issue. And again, with our contractors, they're coming from around the country, so we start reaching out to them and making plans for them to start moving into the area. And lastly, we start our communication with our customers and our stakeholders, such as yourselves. Now, this is a very quick diagram of how we restore power, and there's a little video, the next slide, and if you could run the video.
Permit us to act. Our first priority is to make sure we can produce and deliver electricity to our customers. That's why we start by repairing any damage to power lines that carry electricity from our plants to the local substations, which are called transmission lines. At the same time, we begin to repair the main power lines that will restore power to critical facilities such as hospitals, 911 centers, and fire stations. This process also helps restore power to the hearts of our communities, main thoroughfares where traffic signals, supermarkets, gas stations, and other facilities serve basic needs and help get life back to normal. FPL simultaneously moves into neighborhoods and works to restore service to the largest number of customers in the shortest amount of time. Finally, once the larger repairs have been made, we work to restore smaller groups, converging on the hardest hit areas until every customer's power is restored.
Thank you, Nick. Next slide. Okay, so restoration and how does that work? So post-storm, we have about 100 staging sites identified throughout our service territory. These are very impressive operations. I will tell you, just as someone that likes process, the project manager in me comes out, is a very impressive. The ones that would service West Miami are probably the Magic City staging site. We have here at Magic City Casino. We have a staging site at Hialeah Park. We have one at Metro Zoo, and we have one at Miami-Dade campus. And these are, literally hundreds of acres that we set aside to roll in the trucks. And if I encourage you, Lord forbid we won't have a storm, but if we have a storm, to come and see the operation. Literally, we have these sites pre-mapped. We have site plans for all these areas. It's not something that we plan at the moment of the storm. These sites already have site plans, where the trucks are going to come in, where the catering services are going to be, where the bedding for the temporary workers is going to be, the temporary trailers. The trucks roll in at night. The contractors go to their rooms. They go to eat. We take those trucks. We fuel them overnight, and we put all the equipment there. So when that person wakes up in the morning, those crews, they have breakfast and they're out on the road. So, any time that we could shave off of restoration, we're doing that. There's catering services, laundry services, everything that we could do to keep those contractors out on the road. As you would imagine, we are a utility and we are leveraging technology very heavily. We're using mobile command centers for the hardest hit areas. These mobile command, you could run pretty much all these operations from one of these mobile command centers, and we deploy these into forward areas where storms usually impact the greatest. So, here during Irma, we actually had it stationed temporarily in Pinecrest due to the large vegetation and the prolonged outages that we had there. As you would assume, we're also using drone technology now. With trees toppling and access blocked to a lot of these streets, we actually use drones now to inspect the hardest hit areas and identify areas where we need to make changes. And how do we get all this information out to the customer? Well, we leverage all the communication channels now. We're using traditional media, social media. Again, I encourage everybody to use it. Emails where we have emails. A lot of people now are paying their bills electronically, so we use their emails. We use robocalls, obviously our website as well. Outreach through the elected officials. We understand that residents are going to reach out to FPL, but they're also going to reach out to their elected officials. So we feel that we need to keep you as updated as possible so that you could convey that information to the residents as well. And then obviously commercials. And to us, transparency is very important. We want you to understand, how severe the storm is and what we're doing to address the issue. So how do we make sure that you see, our efforts and make sure that we're doing the best job for you? We're now working with embedding reporters in with our crews, going into the hardest hit areas, so the reporters have a firsthand account of what we're doing and how we do it. We also do ride-alongs with report and do field interviews. And again, briefings to local elected leaders. I know, I think I was on the mayor's speed dial for that week and the manager's speed dial that week during the storm. And, I hope we were able to provide good information. That being said, there's always room for improvement, and there is a lesson to be learned from all storms. Irma was no different. We did see, though, on the positive side, we did see that the investments that we're making, those $3 billion, are paying off. And I thought this was a fascinating figure. During Irma, we restored 50% of our customers within 1 day. So 50% of our customers were on within 1 day, versus 5 days during Wilma. So we attest that to the hardening and the investments we've made in smart technology. We also did see that the hardened poles fared much better against, high winds, where we only had a fraction of the poles fail, compared to Wilma, where, there was a lot more failures of poles. And then the smart technology also was able to prevent 500,000 customers from even ever having an outage, which I think is a good story to tell, that our smart switching technology was able to identify issues and switch and keep those customers on. But like I said, there is also lessons to be learned, and what we saw in Irma was that trees were the #1 cause of outages in Irma, and I think there's no secret there. So what we're doing is that we're trying to stress the importance with our municipal partners, with residents, the importance of right tree, right place, and to really see whenever you're going to plant a tree, to make sure that if it's close to a power line, there are species that won't grow into the power space and won't pose a threat to power lines. So that's one of our main focus. And the other focus was, we did see with some of the automated call systems that the calls were going out and the power wasn't fully restored. So we've invested in a new system, and we're fairly confident that there won't be any missed calls anymore in the future. And with that, that's my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Yes. I have a very specific question. What we experience here in the city of West Miami, the service line are along the backyard. So in other words, we have what is called an easement.
Yes.
Which is a utility easement. We have water running on the ground, and then we have the light poles running also, of course, up in the air. Now, the issue that we have is that a lot of the residents don't know that they can actually call FPL to trim some of those trees that are interfering with the power line.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they take it upon themselves. They hire a garden and so on, which every time I call across one of my neighbors asking those questions, or actually physically seeing it, I totally discourage that. And I tell them to please, call FPL. So how do you go about it? I mean, is there a specific number that they can call? And
I'll bring up Nick, which is our vegetation management specialist, and he could, I'm sure, address those questions.
So we actually have something, a program, it's called the Customer Trim Request. We call it CTR, okay? There is a phone number on your power bill that is the customer care line. If you were to call that and tell them that you have some sort of a tree situation in your backyard with some power lines, our vegetation management team has an entourage of contract foresters. We all started there, that go do house calls basically, and they are trained professionals by us that will assess the situation and provide you either one with a plan if we're not going to be trimming, if the conditions do not warrant an immediate action, as in us sending a tree crew out there. We will tell you, hey, this is why, and here's the plan for the future, okay? If it does warrant tree work, we schedule it, and then we have 21 days to complete that work.
Okay, so from the time they call?
From the time they call the customer care line, there's a time frame that we're supposed to respond, okay? And we have never missed that in, I don't even know, as long as I've been around with this program. So that's the 21-day, 21 days for the guy to inspect it, okay? I can tell you right now, it's not going to be closer to 21 days. We're in our busy season right now, and these things are getting turned over and inspected probably within 2 weeks, okay? So we'll have somebody out there inspect your trees, inspect the lines, everything on your property, okay? And then once we're done, we write it up. From that day, we go there and we assess it, and we determine you do in fact need tree trimming. The tree trimmers are given 21 days to actually perform and complete the work. Like I said, also with this, we're not exceeding that 21 days. That is a target we do not accept. And in fact, our targets are probably around more like 2 weeks as well for that. Okay?
Is there a time limit or how many times you can call FPL?
Negative. As a matter of fact, it's funny you asked that, Mayor. We actually just looked into our chronic callers, and we only have one that has called 6 times over the past 6 years. So there's only one of them. There's a handful of 4s and a handful of 5s, but yeah, you could call, every year if you want, I do have to stress it's not I need to get ready for the hurricane, let me call. We could definitely look at your stuff for that. If we're going to go out there with the same criteria no matter what, okay? If it meets this criteria, we're going to address it immediately. If it doesn't, we will give you a plan as to when it will be, okay? That might not be within that year or even that next year, because we have cycles that come through every neighborhood. We have to clear every line from beginning to end on a different cycle, depending on the type of line it is.
Okay. Do you have any literature on the type of vegetation that you can plant?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If you go to fpl.com/trees, I'm almost positive there's a list there, but Mayor, if you want, I could send you one directly.
Please do.
Okay, if you want to just email me, hey, can you give me that list? I'll send it right to you.
Because that's something that we can post on our website.
A really easy way to determine that yourself is if you have a tree you're wondering about, Google that tree. If the max height is over 14, 15 feet, we can deal with. If that thing is going to grow more than 15 feet, don't do it. Okay, ours is 14 feet. Like, if you look at that max height and you Google the tree species, it says max height 14 feet. You're good. 15 feet we can work with. Otherwise, you're going to have to maintain that. So.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions?
Yes, I do have a question, Mr.
Go
Mayor.
ahead.
Nick, I know you won't be able to answer this specifically, but maybe in general, just as a guideline. Like, I know you come out when the resident calls.
Yes,
You come
ma'am.
out. But more or less, what would constitute your being able to trim that tree? Like,
Okay.
does it have to be touching so far from it? Like, what's the parameters around when you will trim
Okay.
or not?
Now, this is 100% for reliability. Okay, so when we go out there, if a tree is burning in the lines, that's a definite, okay? If the tree is redirecting or pushing any of the lines in any different way, okay, that's a
So
definite.
literally touching the line.
Literally touching the lines,
Okay,
yeah.
that one's
Now,
obvious.
now, that is going to be your lateral backyard lines.
Right.
Okay.
These are the ones I'm speaking about.
Right, absolutely,
Correct. The
okay.
ones we call in our
Yeah,
alleys or
that's the
easements.
most common we get these calls for
Right,
anyway. So.
right.
Now, if it's the line from your house to the pole, which is called the service drop, that is a insulated line and is all supported with a steel wire. We have a little bit more stricter policy on that one. That one has to have extreme weight-bearing condition. Okay, let's not say extreme. It's going to have some serious weight-bearing condition, okay?
Okay.
But there's also a workaround for that. Now, that more often than not is going to be of the homeowner's responsibility, the line that goes from the pole to the house. You know, there are extreme circumstances that we will step in and say, hey, forget that. We'll take care of this, okay? There's something else you can call the customer care line. It's called the disconnect reconnect, okay? If you're really, you know, the service drop, we come out, we say, hey, it's not really, we don't need to address this right now. We'll even tell you, hey, this is how you do the disconnect reconnect. So we will direct you on that anyways. That is a free service, yes.
And those are the ones that are on your property. So
That is, that,
to your house.
to your weatherhead.
I think most of our problems and calls are the ones that are in the alley or the easements.
Okay, yeah, then in that case, it has to be
So
either
does
touching.
it doesn't
or-
have to be touching? I mean, it can be like just very near?
No.
It has to be
very
like- it has to be
near is a-
touching,
Yes,
pretty
ma'am.
much.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, yeah. If it's very near, I'll tell you why, because it's most likely going to be cummed up by the time it is touching. We're going to be coming through there anyways. So it doesn't make any sense for us to come, you know, double dip like that,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Okay. Okay, very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Now that we're talking about smart metering, smartphones and all that, would it help, rather than sending a crew out there with the connections we have, to take a picture of the pole and send it to somewhere in particular where you can assess the importance of, you know, you can take a picture speaks 1,000 words, so it's like, how, you know, instead of saying, is it touching this? No, I'll send you a picture so you can assess it on the phone and then communicate it.
Yeah,
Not only for trees, but down poles or transformers going up.
Right, right. Well, I can only speak to the tree portion of that. And he was asking, can a resident, quote me if I'm wrong here, if a resident, you know, has a problem with a tree or power line, why have us go all the way out there, do this, and just send us a picture? You know, you're dealing with the call center at that point, you know, when they're creating your ticket, because we have to have a ticket created in order to even enter your property. We have to have a work request. That is our, basically, the customer's written notice, not notice, but permission for us to allow to enter their property. So you're dealing with the call center. Now, for them to attach pictures, I have yet to see that. You know, that's something that could happen, although we would have to look at it anyways. We would have to look at that.
If I could say, you know, just bear with and stay tuned, because I have heard, and we are looking at an app where you could attach pictures. I'm not sure for trees, but I think for poles. So I know we're internally looking at that, so I would just say bear with us and stay tuned, because we might be rolling that feature out here very soon. No, you're right on time. That's what I'm saying. You're right on time. You know, we just haven't rolled it out yet, but we are definitely looking at that. And I will tell you, from my side, it does help us. It helps me tremendously. You know, I get a lot of requests from you know, some of our stakeholders. You know, when there's a constituent matter. So you know, I always ask them, send me a picture, because it does. A picture, you know, says 1,000 words. So absolutely.
I do have another question, Armando, for the residents. Along those same lines, you've got your power lines, your cable lines, your phone lines. So just so we know, yours are the ones all the way at the top.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Because
And
a lot of times, it's a phone line, and they shouldn't be calling you.
Commissioner,
So
thank
yours
you.
are always the ones at the top, just for my knowledge.
Yes,
and
thank you so much.
clarification.
I was actually going to say that,
Okay.
and then, you know, I got sidetracked by the other question. But yes, when you look at a distribution pole, you know, we have what is called the comm space. About 30 feet up, those first lines that you see on a pole are not FPL lines. Those are usually your Comcast, your
Those are
you know,
the
your phone
squirrel,
lines.
those are the squirrel highways.
The squirrel
That's the
highways,
ones the
yes,
squirrels are
yes,
going
yes.
back and forth on.
Our lines are usually the ones
the
on
top.
top. Yes.
Like one
The
or
very
two of them,
top.
there's like one or two of them, or three even. sometimes.
Yes, I usually
The three,
usually
right? That's what I
yes.
thought. So all the way at the top, the three are
Yes.
yours, and below you got your phone and your cable.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't want to belabor the presentation, so I might have skipped a very important thing that we're working on. And I think it's something that is going to make you very happy, is that we have just instituted a pilot program where we are actually looking at undergrounding lateral lines. So it's a very small pilot at this point. It's a 3-year pilot, and you know we're you know it's actually just a very extremely small pilot. But if it bears fruit, potentially you'll see us undergrounding more lateral lines as you know in the coming years.
That's a tremendous amount of money, though. That's why it hasn't been done as of yet, right? That's
Exactly.
an exorbitant amount of money.
Yes. You know, the way that it is right now, cities that opt to underground have to pay for that. But, you know, this pilot program would do away with that, and, you know, we would be undergrounding the line. But again, it's just a pilot program, and you know.
You've chosen the spot for the pilot program, or can we apply? Has it already been selected, or is there room for applications?
No, you know, and the truth is, I know that the criteria has been selected.
Okay.
And it has to do with chronic line issues, because obviously, you know, it's agnostic of area,
Of course.
of you know, interest.
Of course, of
It-
course.
It's, you know, just looking at how many outages that line,
Okay.
and, you know, is it in a wooded area? Is it very prone to trees? All that factors in, and it gets a score, and then, you know, these lines will be selected at some point here in the future, and then we'll see how well they perform. I mean, you know, the data that we have on hand is that undergrounding lines did perform substantially better than overhead lines.
Oh, most definitely.
You know, everything has their plus and their you know, their pluses and minuses. When you're looking at underground lines, they're not subject to weather, but if the area is flooded, we have to wait for the waters to recede. So, you know, where we could start fixing an overhead line when the weather, you know, when the winds recede under 35 miles per hour with underground lines, we have to wait until the water recedes, and that could take days or weeks in some cases. So, you know, there's always plus and minuses to undergrounding. Again, you know, if it's harder to diagnose underground lines, so, you know, finding the issue takes longer. So, you know, those are things that you have to take into account, but, you know, and that's why we're doing the pilot program, to see how it works, and, you know, hopefully if it's positive, roll it out to more and more communities.
Fantastic. That's very good news.
Yes, thank you.
Very welcoming news.
Commissioner Suarez, yes?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. I hope you have been welcome to this city.
Yes, yes, of course. Always welcome.
I remember about 7 or 8 years ago in Tallahassee was a presentation about the smart meters.
Yes.
And they were explaining, I think you was there, Mayor, you may remember?
I remember.
They were explaining all the capabilities of the smart meters, you know, how they tell the center what happened where and blah, blah, blah. And we saw that this presentation was not from FPL, was from some company who was introducing the smart meters. And we said, well, this is going to be 20 years from now, or whatever, you know. And eventually, a couple of years later, about 3 or 4 years, it started to change here, the meters, all over the area.
Yes.
So it was great. And let me tell you, I saw from the air the solar panel farm the FPL have by near Daytona, right?
Yes, yes.
Near Daytona, it's about 300 acres or something.
About
Beautiful,
400 acres. And
beautiful farm from solar panel they have there.
Commissioner, in the last 2 years, we've built 14 of those.
Well,
And we're actually building one here in Miami-Dade County.
And I was watching from the air the farm, and you know, everybody likes everybody wants to go to heavens, but nobody wants to die. Remember that.
That's one of my
So
favorite
everybody
sayings.
likes that the electricity was free, but unfortunately it's not free. We have to pay for it. But I congratulate you, your company. Even sometimes, we have complaints. They say, we look at the bill, blah, blah, blah. But I congratulate the FPL that really, has been making wonderful efforts
Thank
and
you.
improvements,
Thank you,
and
Commissioner.
about the system and the procedures. And now you see the storms around the country in the radio, in the television, in the news. There's 15, 20 days without electricity. And we has been lucky here in the county that, some areas maybe take longer, but eventually in a couple of days, everybody's have electricity.
We were the first utility to build to the
So-
extreme wind loading standard.
So really, I'm sorry I have to pay the bill. But I congratulate,
thank you for
the
that.
FPL because you're doing a good job, really.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm just gonna ask, Mr. Pena, did we miss any questions, Mr. Pena?
No, you all addressed all the questions that we were going to place.
Okay, well, thank you once again. We really appreciate it.
Mayor.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for being
Commissioners.
accessible. I still have your number and speed dial, and I will stay there. And by the way, so there's some information and some, we have what? We have pens, we have et cetera.
You have pens, you have clips, you have a documentation on how to make your home and your business storm secure. You have a booklet on how to plan for the storm. And again, this is just a fraction of what there is online. So I really encourage everybody to visit fpl.com and /storm and see all the other information we have on generator safety and whatnot.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next time we have coffee for you.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. Meeting adjourned.